Micromanagement is a word that gets thrown around quite a bit, but sometimes I wonder if we actually know what it is. Today we're going to talk about what micromanagement really is, the harm it does to our teams, and a better way to manage. Micromanagement is a word that gets thrown around quite a bit. I've heard employees use it to complain about anything a manager does to impose accountability or transparency into their work. And I've heard managers shrug off their micromanagement as a normal management style, one that's required to stay on top of things. So let me paint a picture of micromanagement that I hope will be helpful. There are 4 words I would like to use to help us zero in on what micromanagement really is and why it's so harmful. The first word I would use to describe micromanagement is excessive. While oversight is important, the micromanager takes oversight to an extreme. He focuses on and even obsesses over every minor detail of the work he assigns to his team. His constant involvement, unnecessary meddling in the day-to-day tasks, constantly looking over the shoulder, requiring an overabundance of reports, most of which are never looked at, but required just in case, are signs of excessive oversight. The second word is control. Typically, micromanagers stubbornly refuse to give up control. She focuses more on how you do things than on the results you achieve. Now, this flows out of her need to control not just what is done, but how it is done. And speaking of control, if things start to go sideways, look out. She's quick to swoop in and grab the wheel to regain control. The third word I would use to describe micromanagement is disappointment. The micromanager is constantly disappointed by the work his team does. He is always second-guessing their choices and decisions. He is constantly dissatisfied with their results, nitpicking every aspect of their work. No matter how good it is, there is always something he would do differently or do better. The final word I would use to describe micromanagement is dependency. Ultimately, micromanagement creates a sense of dependency on the manager. She creates processes that funnel every decision through her, and she gets upset if any decision is made without her. It doesn't matter how much of a bottleneck she becomes, she still insists that the team run every decision past her and bring every problem to her. And eventually, the team becomes incapable of functioning without her. It's not surprising that this kind of management style would have a negative impact on the team. But if you're not yet convinced, let me make a couple more observations. One is that micromanagement stifles creativity. Employees under the microscope take fewer risks. They make sure not to wander outside the box for fear of getting their hands slapped. Further, micromanagement erodes morale. If you've ever worked for a micromanager, you know that this style of leadership is demoralizing. It breeds negativity because it screams, "I don't trust you." What could be more disempowering and demotivating than that? Additionally, it limits growth. When you are on such a short leash, there is no room to grow. Even worse, skills cannot really be evaluated because you're not permitted to use them. And in the process, poor performers are provided with cover to hide. So individuals and teams simply cannot grow in a culture of micromanagement. They aren't even given a chance. With all of that on the table, we still insist on doing it. Why? Why do we choose micromanagement even though we know the dangers? Well, the biggest reason I hear from micromanagers is they simply cannot trust their team. They just don't trust the skills, the reliability, and the commitment of their team. And they feel as if they have no other option. If they don't stay on every detail, the team will let them down, and they will be the ones holding the bag. For others, it's a fear of failure. They have a deep desire to avoid mistakes, and the only way to make sure they don't fail is to control everything. A final reason I want to mention is insecurity. Micromanagement is a way to highlight our own value. We insert ourselves into every process and make ourselves the center of every decision. Basically, we make ourselves indispensable. Well, as much as these three reasons might make sense, they still don't make micromanagement a healthy approach. So if you're struggling with micromanagement, I'd suggest you spend some time developing an alternate approach. Seek instead to be a coach. As a manager, your primary job is to empower, develop, and guide your team. How can you do that without micromanaging? We have several videos on this channel that can help, but I'll offer a few quick suggestions here. First, learn to focus on what, not how. Process over results is a hallmark of micromanagement. Coaches flip that. Instead of being overly concerned about how the tasks are completed, they focus on the results that are achieved. Second, empower and trust your team. Trust them to make decisions. Trust them to take ownership. Now, you may have to start small and build that trust over time, but your team is probably much more capable than you are giving them credit for. You see, people tend to rise to the level of our expectations, but I can hear you asking, what if they mess up? So here's number 3. Stop expecting perfect performance. Micromanagers are notorious for justifying their management style by arguing that their employee will just mess it up. Well, they are going to mess up. You messed up when you started. You weren't an expert when you began, and you probably are making a bunch of mistakes now as a manager. But that's how you grew, and that's how they will grow. So give them the same room to stretch, the same room to learn, the same room to grow that you received. Fourth, set clear expectations. Be clear about what you want. Be clear about what you expect. And make sure they understand what you want and exactly what they are responsible for and by when. Finally, learn the art of delegation. We've got a couple videos on that subject in this channel, and I encourage you to check those out for a more detailed discussion. But poor delegation is one of the things that leads us to believe we have no choice but to micromanage. So perfect that skill. No matter how much we try to rationalize it, micromanagement destroys our success as a manager. So it is important to be on guard against it, and that we learn to be a coach instead. Thank you for partnering with us as you find your lead. If this was helpful, hit the like button, and if you haven't already, subscribe to our channel for more leadership content.